everyone. Welcome to the Lunchtime Artist Chats. Today we're going to talk to Jessie and Dean from Cake Industries, who are running, who are running a workshop at Signal at the moment called Robots Can.
Yay!
And making some really amazing things, which I got to see yesterday. But to start with, can you just tell us a bit about Cake Industries, what it is, what you do?
I should probably explain that Cake Industries is just us. It's kind of not. It's not a company. It's meant to sound like that. It's kind of modelled after one of our artist heroes, I guess, Young Hae Chang Heavy Industries. It's the idea of Korean companies that like to have everything followed by heavy industries. So we like the idea of having a very ambiguous name like Cake Industries, always make people confused about who and what we are.
Also Cake Industries, cake, because a lot of what we use is, what we try to use mostly is open source software and hardware for everything that we build and share with people. And the whole idea is with sharing, and so you can't have a cake without a lot of people sharing the cake, so it's Cake Industries.
You could eat an entire cake, but you'd get pretty sick. So I guess we've been running under the name of Cake Industries for about 8 years now, and we just found it was a easier way of consolidating everything we do. We don't do any one thing, but primarily we're artists, and I guess we've found a way to make a living by doing what we do as artists, and applying it commercially as well as in our own projects.
Yeah, so in addition to our own projects, we have other artists and arts organisations come to us with things they need to happen, so activation, and we'll come up with technologies that will make their project work.
Do you find it hard to produce your own work or focus on your own work while you're assisting and installing and helping other artists create their own work?
Yeah, we lost December. We don't even remember December. And November and October. It's really difficult to make time for yourself when things start getting really popular. And if your skills are sought after, I guess you have to kind of just book in time like you would any other kind of work to just work on something yourself. And so we try to at least weekly have one afternoon or one evening where we force ourselves to do some sort of challenge or make something that we haven't actually built before as a way of making ourselves continue with our own practice. Otherwise you end up just getting sucked into making everyone else's stuff, I guess, in the realm that we work in.
Do you two collaborate mostly like as artists or produce your own like individual work?
We have different skill sets, but we mostly build all our stuff together, I guess. Yeah.
So how did you begin, as artists or as people who assisted other artists? What inspired you to create Cake Industries? Was it your drive as an artist or your love of art? If you know?
I guess we both began in separate worlds and doing separate things. I used to be an audio engineer, so I used to travel around with rock bands mixing music,
And I, pass the mic, and I studied performance art, and I'm really into photography and stuff like that, so.
And basically we found that on the side we were starting to create and build our own ideas, and we were very interested in what we were finding was happening in different little communities and began to connect and do things ourselves. And we eventually found one day that we realised we were more often than not doing something ourselves, so we decided to quit any of the other type of work that we were doing and focus 100% on ourselves.
So how did you become interested in robotics and some of the things you're doing in Signal? Because obviously, like you just said, you studied performance art. Did you teach yourselves or part of small groups?
I guess it stems from childhood. I mean, we both loved robots as a child, and we wish that, we thought back then as a child that robotics would advance to the stage that by the time we were going to high school, we'd have robot friends taking us to high school, or we'd all have embedded robots in our houses when we were adults and things like that. So the lack of that has driven us to kind of access the DIY robotics set that's available at the moment, to really kind of try and integrate it a bit more into an artistic context, for one.
So these images we passed around, this is images of the kind of robots that we dreamed about and we saw when we were kids and dreamt about taking us to school and wished that we had at home. And this black and white picture here, if you've seen this image, this is Electro. This is the very first robot, 1928. Electromechanical robot made from phone circuits and 78 RPM records. No computers. And this is, I guess, why we thought that we would be growing up with robot helpers taking us to school, with things that shopped for us, with things that helped us. And because it hasn't happened, I guess that's why we're trying to buck the trend to have robots purely in research capacities. For things like Asimo, as good as Asimo is, Honda is building Asimo as a research project. And we're not going to be seeing Asimo turning up in homes or in foyers greeting people.
What's Asimo?
Asimo is a little android robot, very smart little guy. He's a humanoid robot. He can avoid people, he can walk, he can run, he can climb steps. And it's really heartbreaking when he falls over because he looks so human. But we'll never see him in our homes because he's a research project. And I guess that's why we're so passionate about trying to help people understand how to build these robots themselves. And by building robots themselves, they're empowered to then be part of making robots part of our world.
And to not only see robots as one thing, to realise that you can do more with robots than everyday functions. You can use it to express yourself, and you can use it to create other things, not just for the robot's sake itself.
Do you have a dream robot in mind that you'd like to create in your lifetime? And if so, what is it? And do you think you might be able to build it one day?
Yeah. So mostly what we're interested, we came up with a term that we like to call future relics. And we like the idea of a robot that's never quite living up to its functions. We like a robot that's a little bit aged beyond its years and broken, that makes mistakes, that bumps into walls, that constantly needs repair. And I guess it kind of, this book here, we'll pass this round in a moment as well, this book we see as the base core concept of a future relic. These robots are kind of, this book was written in the 70s, and it's a prediction of what robots will do in the future, and examples of robots in the 70s, educating children and so on. And so I guess our core idea of a robot would be an ideal of a robot that's pretty much from the 70s, well beyond its use by...
I guess that comes from growing up watching a lot of 70s sci-fi and thinking it's awesome. So I think we'd like to make a robot that was a bit disheveled, but is kind of beautiful because of that. And I forgot what I was going to say next.
Kind of sounds like it's got human qualities and that it's not perfect. And just, yeah.
Yeah. So human qualities, that's what we like to imbue in our creations, is we like to anthropomorphize them and give them personality and give them some sort of quality that goes beyond kind of their function and gives them a bit of pizzazz. I'm going to go with pizzazz.
So if we imagined a world where we had robot friends and robot helpers, how do you think that would change society or just a general idea of the kind of impact it would have on the way we live?
I guess we probably don't see that future becoming a world of lazy people. I think more than ever we would be working hard, because keeping a piece of electromechanical equipment running is a lot of hard work. It's like maintaining a car, but 1,000 times more complicated. So we kind of see this future not being one in which we're lying around on beds waiting for robots to bring us food and drink. We'd probably be working quite hard to keep these robots running and monitoring their progress. And
So kind of like droids in Star Wars, where they're assisting more than kind of, you relying completely on them.
Does anyone have any questions from out there that you'd like to ask Jessie or Dean about cake industries or robots or anything? Oh yeah, can you tell us about what all this is? That's pretty good.
Yeah, cool. This little blue guy here was a Saturday afternoon project. In 2 hours, we gave ourselves the task of getting I think it was $2 at the local op shop, $2 remote control car, and make it race a racetrack around our studio without bumping into walls, and with enough smarts to be able to help itself out of a situation if you were to drop a book in front of its path. And we were only allowed to use the equipment that we had in the studio, and we gave ourselves, I think it was 2 hours. And by the end of that 2 hours, we had a robot that was driving itself. And we use the term robot because it's autonomous. We don't think that robot needs to mean that it's got human qualities, so we call this car a robot.
And I think we on the side of robots that aren't humanoid. A car can have a personality, or a box can have a personality if it's activated in some way. This car here was an extension of that car. We added more sensors, and we spent a lot more time. I think we spent about 4 days on 2 of these. We call them the squigs because of the sound they make, the squeak, 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 squeak.
And with these guys, we tried to build in more personality. So as time goes on, the 2 robots, even though they start with the same programming, experience their world differently and begin to take on slightly different traits. And after a couple of hours of driving, they actually have quite different driving personalities. So one may become quite reserved and slow and careful, whereas the other is far more aggressive and speeds around a track and aggressively rams into things and pulls itself out of bad situations.
Some of that's intentional and some of it's accidental, but it all kind of leads into different elements that becomes the personality, which is pretty cool. Down here in the front here, 3D printing.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is a model of a very ancient Indonesian sculpture. We were being told by somebody to create something Indonesian with robotics. So as a joke, we just kind of said, okay, we'll make a robot make an Indonesian sculpture, and it actually came out quite beautiful. And we kind of played with the thickness of the layers to try and enhance the way that it looks like it's got mistakes in it. It's got very thick layers, thicker than it should be.
So we've got this really awesome 3D printer replicator too, and we'll be using a lot of what we do with that to make parts for robotics. So this guy is going to form the basis of a storytelling robot. So we'll model the face and print a face and arms and articulated fingers out of 3D printed parts, such as the one that's being passed around.
So if you think about a very thin bit of plastic or wax being pushed through a very hot tube, and then it comes out a very thin point, if you move that tube around on a layer, you'll make a kind of a thick kind of piece of plastic. Yeah. So if you were to do a circle, and each time you come around that circle, move slightly up, you'll end up building up a tube shape. And so that's the basis of 3D extrusion printing. We've got 4 of these extrusion printers with us here for the workshops at the moment. We're about to get onto those this afternoon.
We'll work backwards. We've just been working with drawing machines, or drawing robots. We have some egg bots, which are little machines that if you place an egg inside and a pen in a mechanism in a printer design that you've made in a software program. Also a polygraph drawing machine, which is up on a board, and it's held between 2 ropes, and it's moved around again by a software program.
We've also built some, or we've used some little guys like this. They're called solar bots. They harvest power for a certain period of time, and when they've got enough power, they pulse it through their motors. We've put them on overhead projectors and put coloured gels, and they jitter around making colourful visuals. And we also, at the end of last week, did a pretty intensive programming set with some very simple tank robots, and we were able to go all the way up to robots avoiding obstacles and making their own choices. So essentially like these cars, but on a smaller scale and much slower. And we also then got those robots to drag pens behind them, seek out other objects and play music, and then freeform.
And our first workshop, have we talked about that yet, was line following robots. So we assembled those and worked out how they worked, and then made them follow a track around while activating different motors and fans and lights and sound elements.
But primarily we still do see ourselves as artists, because we're always trying to understand the reason why we feel something about these objects, and the effect that a robot with human qualities can have on a person. We find that really interesting.
Anyone else? Well, thanks for chatting with us today. It was really interesting and insightful, and we'll see you at the showcase and around Signal.